Hi guys, Jasmo here, and in this video I want to explain how my Consecrated Path Slayer works. It's a very fun character that I've been enjoying mapping and delving with, and I'm going to go through first like the general playstyle of the build, then I'm going to go through the skill gem setup so that you know what skills you are using and how they work and how they interact together and what you need to be playing. Then we're gonna be going through the gear, which is right now still kind of being optimized, but it's definitely on a decent level. And then I'm gonna go through like some tips and tricks and general playstyle as well as passives, right? So we're gonna look at the passive skill tree and how everything interacts together so that you understand how you can build a character like that. I definitely recommend it if you're having trouble with syndicates. It's a very tanky character. As you can see, we have 8,000 life, more than 8,000 life, and we're gonna go to up to like 10,000 even, depending on which passives we're gonna take. But first, let's take a look at the skill gems, right? So we are running as a main skill Consecrated Path. I still have it at level 19 and I have no problem with that. It's not that big of a deal. Of course, the higher level, the higher quality, the better. But we are running Consecrated Path with the important thing about it is that it converts 50% of the physical damage to fire, right? And then we are also using Avatar of Fire, which converts the remaining 50%. So we are 100% converting physical damage to fire. We are not dealing any physical damage. Other than that, we have linked it to fire penetration support. We are penetrating with fire penetration, with Wise Oak and with some passives, which I'm going to talk about later. Then we have added fire damage, which is added fire damage and maim are kind of the weakest ones. So if you replace it with something, like if you find something that gives you better damage, then cool. But we have added fire because of course that doesn't get reduced by Avatar of Fire, so that's good. And we have a solid base physical damage from the weapon to convert. Then we get melee physical damage, which is huge, more multiplier on the damage that we have from the weapon, and elemental damage with attacks, which is just the most massive multiplier that we have here. Attack skills deal 53% more elemental damage, and maim of course, which is 29 more damage. So that's the main setup. And because we are using a two-hander, we are running the combs, but let's continue with the gems. So we also have just a standard cast when damage taken, Immortal Call with increased duration, and then we also have Summon Flame Golem, and this doesn't have to be linked, it's not affected or it doesn't affect anything. But we are also generating charges, we are generating endurance charges as we are running through the map, because we are using this Warlord's Mark with Blasphemy. So we have Warlord's Mark with Blasphemy and we are generating endurance charges, so that means the Immortal Call is going to be a little bit longer than normally. We are running Blasphemy, Warlord's Mark, and Herald of Ash. Those are our auras. And then we're also running Blood Rage here in this socket to generate frenzy charges and just attack faster, and that's it, right? Other than that, we have Leap Slam with faster attacks and Fortify, very standard. And then also Ancestral Protector. I have a totem here, like it's just for more attack speed while the totem is active, so that I can just put it at the door of a fortification with Syndicate and just smash it faster, or I'm only using it for bosses sometimes, right? So that's it. Those are the setups. Obviously nothing in the chest because it's Kaom's Heart. And let's go, I guess, through the gear, right? So Kaom's Heart naturally is a perfect fit, and I managed to find a really nice one for I think like 40 chaos or 50 chaos that has an amazing corrupted implicit, which is 6% reduced cold damage taken. So that is amazing. And then it of course has no sockets, but it has up to 40% of increased fire damage and 500 maximum life. And because we are life based and have like more than 200% increased life from passive tree, we get to have like 8,000 life. Without it, we are at like 6,000 something. With it, we are at 8,000, right? And we can get up to 10,000 with this character, with this passive tree setup and so on. So Kaom's Heart increases our fire damage. Hrimnor's Resolve also increases our fire damage, increases life, cold resist, and you cannot be frozen if you used a fire skill recently. So if you are opening strong boxes, you just have to use your Consecrated Path, and then you cannot be chilled or frozen, right? Which is amazing. This is really very important, because being chilled and frozen is what gets you killed. Like being chilled, frozen, and stunned, those are the worst things. And if you can find this helmet with a lab enchant for Consecrated Path, like for AOE or for damage or for range, whichever you find, like you're gonna be a really lucky person, because I couldn't find any any enchants, for like any helmets actually with Consecrated Path enchants. Then we have the Tiki Coral Amulet that basically increases our fire damage further, maximum life, fire resistance, and some life regenerated when you're on low life, which is when it matters the most, and increased fire damage up to 70%. It's kind of huge amount of damage, right? Then we have just a Stygian Vase with double resist, triple resist when you craft it, and maximum life. It can get better, like you can find a much better one. This one I just found it and crafted it myself, right? I didn't buy it. Then we have rings. One of them gives us a lot of stats because we need... This build actually gets surprising amount of int because you're going to the top side of the tree a little bit, but this gives me so much strength, dex, and int. Also adds some fire damage which doesn't get halved by Avatar of Fire, and a lot of life. I can replace... This is the ring that I'm gonna replace, I think, the soonest, but I need to find something that has a lot of dex. Like if I can find a ring that has like 40 dex and a lot of life, and then maybe all resists or something with some chaos resist, that would be great, right? So that's what I'm gonna be looking to replace. And then just a huge ring that gives me a lot of life, triple resists, like not that much, but triple resists, physical damage to attacks, actually significant damage, and lots of chaos resist, because I'm going for the chaos resist cap here, right? We are engaging heavily with syndicates, and I just wanted to try how it feels like if you cap your chaos resist. On gloves, not sure what you should enchant them with. You can get much better gloves. I just got them because they had like triple resist with chaos resist and crafted life on them. And then also amazing boots because they have 5% increased movement speed if you've hit an enemy recently, and 30% movement speed, and 80 life plus 2% increased max life. These are very, very good shoes. Like these are amazing Nikes. I love them. They're very fast. For the flasks, I'm using just very basic setup of Quicksilver Flask and Silver Flask. Both of them have 29 increased movement speed. You can get up to 30% and then 40% increased duration. I like increased duration on my flask a lot. I have increased duration here with Curse Immune Diamond Flask because even though we are using Kangors, we still want to crit, right? We still want to crit. That's why this is such a good setup. So maybe I can explain it now, I guess. So the amount of crit we have is sufficient to sustain, like, let's see, 9% here, like 10%. And so if you are jumping into a pack, you usually are going to crit, especially with the flask. With the flask, you're going to crit, and you're going to not have any crit multiplier, but we are running elemental overload. Because of the elemental overload, we have 40% more elemental damage, which is just 40% more damage. So as you can see, even though this doesn't look that impressive when you look at the tooltip, it's just, you know, 50k DPS, but when you account for the fact that you are going to have 40% more multiplier from elemental overload, that you are gonna have insane penetration. Like here we have 8% fire penetration. We can pick up also this one. Here we have another 3% penetration, and then we are going toward this, which is another 6% penetration on top of our fire penetration support and the Wise Oak, because we have resistances balanced so that fire resistance is the highest, and if it's the highest, then you get 14% up to 15% even elemental damage resistance, right? Penetration for the fire, right? So that's a huge damage increase. Then we've got the frenzy charges, rolling 3 frenzy charges, which is like what, 4 per each, so that's 12% more damage multiplier, and it just adds up to a lot of damage actually when you get rolling, right? And then just the regular flask to, in case I didn't use my Consecrated Path recently, I'm just running into a strong box and get frozen randomly, I can deal with that in just instant life flask, and that's it, right? When it comes to the passive skill tree, we got a lot of life, only one jewel. I should put another jewel here. This is a good spot because I don't want to travel too much. But I could put something like that as well, like 7% increased max life, which is the maximum amount you can get, and then increased melee damage, increased critical strike chance with fire skills, like whatever damage you can find plus max life is fine, right? You don't need anything else. We are picking up lots of life. We are picking AOE. We have also potential, like if you really want to pick up AOE, I found that the base AOE from the Consecrated Path is actually pretty big, and the more you get it, there is like a diminishing returns, because we could go and travel here like 1, 2, actually just 1 and 2 nodes, and then go to area damage and area radius, right? Very easily. And then I also worked on my weapon so that I can get white slots and get the increased area of effect, right? So if you compare this AOE, for example, right, to this AOE, it's not that big of a difference, right? It's like, it looks like actually like 5 to 10% of the radius, right? It's not that big. It is a difference, but not that big. This is, however, this is 20 quality, 20 level 20 increased area, so it's supposed to be big, right? So if you want more area, you can increase that. Actually, I could try also Conk effect. Maybe it would be bigger multiplier than Maim, but that's another thing. So we are picking up this life wheel. So maybe let's go over like how you would level this character, right? To level this character as a Slayer through the ascendancies, you're going first. I went first for the Leech because you don't need that much more damage. As long as you can buy a decent weapon or find a decent weapon, you're gonna be fine. So these things go, I go for these things later. First I go for the Leech, and also the good thing is attack damage leached as life, so it's not physical attack damage. That's important because you're gonna be dealing fire damage and physical damage at some point before you go Avatar of Fire. So you're gonna be using all of that damage to leech, and then you get overkill damage leached as life and immune to bleeding. This is very good if you get it before, like if you get it right after Act 3, right? Like right after Dominus or around Dominus, you're gonna get this, and then for the Act 4, you're gonna be immune to bleed when leeching. This is huge because you don't need to struggle getting the bleed flask every single time you need to upgrade your flask. Then 100% increased life leached per second and 30% increased damage while leeching, which is basically all the time. That's another thing that ramps up while you're killing mobs. So that's another thing, like the damage as you're killing mobs increases and increases when you like kill a couple of packs, then you deal so much more damage. And of course, perma leech, right, when you're at full life. Then we go for the headsman, which is 20% more damage if you've killed recently, and increased AOE again. They cannot take reflected physical damage, doesn't matter at all because you go Avatar of Fire, so you are not bothered by the reflected physical damage either way. And then in the end we just go for the AOE and more damage. And if you wanted to transition this guy into a build that is, what is the skill? Molten Strike. You can transition it into a Molten Strike character as well. I think it's not that difficult. I don't want to bother though because I wanted just to try Consecrated Path. It's a very fun skill to use. So at first I went through here for like the attack speed and accuracy because you're gonna need accuracy in the beginning, but then later I switched it to physical damage and max life. Go through here to pick up this node, which is the increased attack speed, accuracy, which you need in the beginning, and ignore movement speed penalties from armor. Then we pick up life and some two-handed damage, more life. We go here. This is for late game. I picked up very recently. We got more life, more life. I actually rushed high up here to the Bone Breaker, and then I rushed to AOE, and then I rushed to Elemental Overload and this, so that I can pick up Avatar of Fire whenever I want, right? And other than that, we're just picking life. It's fairly optimized. I will post a link to this build in the description so that you can get Path of Building link as well if you want to follow it. Other than that, just bunch of life, and that's it. So we went through the skill gems, we went through the gear, we went through the passives. So now when it comes to the playstyle, you can see some footage from me doing some very fun maps, and maybe I'm gonna make a video about why you should run specific maps, because some maps are way more fun with this build than others, like Glacier and what's the other one? The not the Canyon. Yeah, Canyon, I think, are very fun. What is the name of the map? Crater. Very fun map because there are so many mobs. You just jump from pack to pack with your Consecrated Path. Don't worry about anything. So basically, you just want to keep up Blood Rage. Put it on a hotkey that's very easy to use. If it falls off, you just spamming Consecrated Path and your flasks. Every pack you want to use the Diamond Flask and the Wise Oak before you smash into the mobs, right? So that you have this penetration and increased crit. And then you can basically jump into anything. This character is so tanky. I'm jumping into syndicates, like I'm jumping into a small fort with 4 syndicate members in it, and I'm just holding the Consecrated Path button and just the leech is enough. Sometimes, very rarely, you need to use Life Flask, but not that much. I think Delve and high level maps are, sometimes they get you a little bit lower than half of your health, but still, if we increase the health, if we increase the armor as well by getting better bases of my gear, that's something that can be optimized as well, right? We can get better bases for the gear so that I can get more armor, and we can get also resistances to more than 109, I think it is, to be capped against elemental weakness, and that's it. It's a very fun character to play. I definitely recommend it if you have a couple of exalts to spend on weapon and chest. They're not very expensive though. It's actually one of the cheaper builds because it's not popular. Like Calms, it's not that popular. Bow builds are being run, so it's still a significant amount of change, like half an exalt or whatever, depends on the role that you want for fire damage. I definitely wanted to get like 39. For one tip I can give you is, if you are looking to buy a unique and you want to get a decent roll on it, of course, because you don't want to be like, you know, 20% increased fire damage, but you already spent the money on counts. Like if you are spending money on a unique, just make sure to buy a good base, but search for like the one value under, like 1 point under perfect, because if you look at this if you look up this Calm's Heart, you will find like 39% increased damage with like a good corrupt implicit mod for like 40 or 50 chaos. But if it's just 1% more increased fire damage, right? If it's just 1% on top of that, the 40%, then it will cost like 4 times as much, which is kind of crazy, right? So just same with this, right? You see, I went for the 69 here, I went for the 39 here, I went for the 39 here, so that's how I saved so much. That's like an exalt like that, or like 2 exalts that I saved based on just going for 1% below the maximum roll, right? And then you can search that in Path of Trading and in PoE Trade, right? And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.